Hey guys, sorry I'm not there with you today. So today's going to be sort of a regular plan though. We're going to do the lesson on pages 22 and 23. Okay, so this is page 22. Hopefully you're already on this page though. Um, and the way we'll do it is I'll do these two as examples for you. And then you guys will get some time to do the 8 that are on page 23. Then I'll go over the answers for you, and then you'll spend the rest of the period in the Math 180 software like usual. Please try to make sure you're making some progress in the Learn Zone and not just playing the Brain Arcade games. All right, so we want to compare 3/8 and 5/12. So to compare means decide if one is bigger than the other or if they are equal. And there's lots of different strategies we can use. Remember, we've talked a lot lately about identifying that like one fraction is greater than one and one fraction is not greater than one. So you can tell that obviously the one that is greater than one is greater. We're doing the same thing with a half. Like if one is bigger than a half and one's not bigger than a half, then you could make an easy comparison there. But in the end, the best strategy that always works is just identifying a common denominator and then turning both of those fractions into equivalent fractions that have the same denominator. And then you can make a really easy comparison. So I think that's probably what the strategy that we're going to rely on through most of this activity, but there might be a couple along the way where you can use a different strategy. So for example, if you look at these first two fractions, they're both less than a half, right? 4/8 is a half and 6/12 is a half. And so you can't really use the strategy of like, oh, one's bigger than a half and one's not. So really the only thing we can do is try to find common denominator. A common denominator is a multiple of 8 and a multiple of 12, but the same number, a number that is a common multiple of 8 and 12. Remember, we've practiced this a lot. And so you can list out your 8s. So here they encourage you to list your multiples of 8, and that would be 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. We could keep going, but I'm going to stop there. And then our multiples of 12. Right, I'm getting the 8 from here and the 12 from here. So 12, and then 2 times 12, or 12 plus 12 is, I'm going to give you a second to think about it, 24. So we don't even need to really go any further at this point. We have a common multiple. 24 is a multiple of 8, and 12 is a multiple of 8. And so it says rename the fractions. That's what I would say, rewrite them as equivalent fractions, but we want them to both have 24 as the denominator. So 3/8 is equal to something over 24, and 5/12 is equal to something over 24. Remember, the way we do this is we figure out what are we multiplying by. So 8 times something equals 24. Oh, realize I'm kind of low on the screen here. 8 times something is 24. That something is 3. So then we do the same thing to the top. 3 times 3 equals 9. So 3/8 is the same as 9/24. And then over here, 12 times something equals 24. That's going to be 2. So 5 times 2 gets me 10. So 5/12 was equal to 10/24, and 3/8 was equal to 9/24. So those are really close to each other. They were only different by 1/24. It's very small. But in the end, the 5/12 that was greater, right? And so let's go put our greater than symbol up here so that the alligator mouth is opening toward the 5/12, and we're good. We could have written it down here too, where it says compare the fractions, but I don't think we need to do that. Just fill in the box here. All right, let's do the exact same thing right here. We're trying to compare 2/3 and 3/5. They're both greater than 1/2, right? 2 is more than half of 3 and 3 is more than half of 5. So we can't use half as like a little trick to compare. So instead, we're going to have to find a common denominator between 3 and 5. Now, we could list out our multiples of 3 and our multiples of 5 like we did here. We perfectly fine strategy. But I want you to see another way to do this. Another way to do this is you can always just take the two denominators and multiply them together, and that will get you a number you could choose to use as your common denominator. So right here in the, we don't have to write anything in the compare strategy line. Don't worry about that. I'm just going to use that line to write 3 times 5 equals what? Think about it for a second. Write it if you know it. 15. So let's use 15 as our common denominator. We could do the multiples thing if we wanted to, but instead, let's just come straight down here and go 2/3 is equal to something over 15, and 3/5 is equal to something over 15. To go from 5 to 15, I'm multiplying by 3. So that means I got to take this 3 right here and multiply it by 3 as well, and I get 9. And then to go from 3 to 15, I'm multiplying by 5. Right? Notice that these are, I took the 5 and multiplied by 3 because I did 5 times 3. And I took the 3 and multiplied by 5 because I did 3 times 5. Like, of course it comes out to these two numbers because that's what I used to like make the common denominator. So I got to multiply the top here by 5 and I get 10. And so these were really close as well, right? This one turned out to be equal to 10/15 and this one turned out to be equal to 9/15. But in the end, this one was bigger. So let's draw our greater than sign here. We want that alligator mouth opening up towards the 2/3 and we're good. Okay, so I want you to work on these 8 now. Your strategy for each of them should be to find a common denominator between the two numbers, just like you would if you were adding the fractions or subtracting the fractions. You got to put them in common denominators first. It's also the best strategy for comparing fractions. So write them with the same denominator. And then after that, comparing should be easier, right? It's like, it's just whichever number has a higher number in the numerator and the top is the bigger fraction. So whoever's teaching this class today, if you could pause the video here for about 8 minutes or so, since there's 8 questions. And then after 8 minutes, even if students aren't complete with the work, go and play this video and I'll go through the answers for them. All right, so hopefully you got your 8 minutes to work on these questions. And so let's go through them real quick and then software for the rest of the period. I see my denominators on these two here are 8 and 3. So I could list out 8s and 3s, but instead, let me just do 8 times 3. 8 times 3 equals 24. So I'm going to use 24 as my denominator. If you used something else, as long as it worked, that's fine. But I think 24 is probably my choice on this one. So 3/8 is equal to something over 24, and 1/3 is equal to something over 24. 8 times 3 equals 24. So 3 times 3 is 9 here. And then 3 times 8 is 24. So 1 times 8 is 8 up here. So the 3/8 is worth 9/24, where the 1/3 is only worth 8/24. So I'm going with the 3/8 as my greater than. This one is much easier because look, I can make 10 my common denominator because 5 goes into 10. If I just take the 3/5 and multiply by 2 on the top and the bottom, that writes it as the equivalent fraction 6/10. And 6/10 is less than 7/10. And so that means that the 3/5 is less than 7/10. Next, 3/4 and 2/3. Well, what should I use as my common denominator? I think I'm going to use 12ths because 3 times 4 is 12. So 3/4 is equal to something over 12, and 2/3 is equal to something over 12. 4 times 3 gets me 12. So 3 times 3 gets me 9. 3 times 4 gets me 12. So 2 times 4 is 8. So this one was worth 9/12. This one was worth 8/12. So this one's bigger. So let's draw the symbol like that. Or look, this is another one of the easier ones, like above, because 3 goes into 9. So we can just change this one so that it has 9 on its denominator by multiplying top and bottom by 3, and we get 6/9. And that's less than 7/9. So we're going to make the 7/9 the greater. Next, we got thirds and sevenths. And I can't think of any like low numbers that 3 and 7 both go into. 7, 14, so 21, which is also just 7 times 3, right? 7 times 3 equals 21. So that means that 2/7 is equal to something over 21, and 1/3 is equal to something over 21. 3 times 7 gets me 21. So 3 times 2 is 6. And 7 times this 3 gets me 21. So 7 times 1 is 7. So this one was worth 6 over 21. This one was worth 7 over 21. So this one's bigger. The 1/3 is bigger. There we go. Next, we got 4/5 and 3/8. Hey, look, this is one of the easier ones where we don't have to do all the math. Look, 4/5 is greater than 1/2, right? Because 4 is more than half of 5. But 3/8, on the other hand, is not as big as 1/2. 3 is less than half of 8. So that means that this one's less than half. This one's greater than a half. Let's make that one greater. Next, we got 3/5 and 4/6. I guess I'll just multiply them. I don't know what else to do. 5 times 6 equals 30. So that means that 3 over 5, we got to write it as something over 30. And 4 over 6, got to write it as something over 30. 5 times 6 equals 30. So 3 times 6 equals 18. 6 times 5 equals 30. So 4 times 5 gets me 20. So this one was worth 18/30. This one was worth 20/30. So this is the bigger one. And we write our symbol like that. Last one, I noticed that 5 can go right into 10. So I can change 4/5 so that it has a 10 in its denominator by multiplying top and bottom by 2, and I get 8/10, which is not as big as 9/10. So 9/10 is the bigger one. All right, that's the book lesson for today. Should be about halfway through the period, I think. So spend the rest of the time in the Math 180 software learn zone, please. See you tomorrow.